Welcome to Spirit's Journey, coming to you live on Truth Frequency Radio and simulcast on Oneness Talk Radio. Your hosts are Patrick and Catherine Andrews.
Join us each week as we explore a wide range of metaphysical topics such as dreams, astrology, intuitive readings, and life purpose. You'll receive practical guidance so that you can live your most awesome life.
Learn more about what we do at intuitiveschool.com and connect with us on Facebook at Spirit's Journey Radio. Welcome to Spirit's Journey, coming to you live on Truth Frequency Radio and simulcast on Oneness Talk Radio. You can also find us on iHeartRadio, TuneIn, and TalkStream Live. We're here in the Heartland, holding the energy for spiritual truth and awareness. I'm Patrick.
And I'm Catherine. Welcome, everyone. We are continuing our series of interviewing some of the amazing presenters at the upcoming Global Spiritual Awakening Conference, November 16th and 17th. And today we have Alan Cohen, who I'm so excited about because I've read several of his books and love how he writes. He's actually the author of 27 books. That's so prolific, including his best-selling The Dragon Doesn't Live Here Anymore and A Deep Breath of Life, and the classic Are You as Happy as Your Dog? He's a contributing writer for the New York Times #1 best-selling series Chicken Soup for the Soul, and his books have been translated into 25 foreign languages. He's been featured on Oprah.com and in USA Today, and the Washington Post, and 101 top experts. Alan also has a radio program, Get Real, and it's broadcast weekly on Hay House Radio. He also has a monthly column From the Heart, which is featured in magazines internationally. So welcome, Alan.
I'm delighted to be here, Catherine. Thank you so much.
Well, I'm going to have to talk to you. Who helps you with your book titles? Because all your book titles are so catchy. I buy them all. I'm like, I got to read this book.
Well channeled from God. What could I say?
Yes. Well, they're amazing. Many of the books. And so I want to get started talking about this idea of a lot of people more and more are trying to claim themselves as their role as a light worker. And we need it so much in the world today. So I find a lot of people, lack the courage to really step up to the plate. And so what would you say to people? How would you guide them so they can get up the courage and the confidence to come forth as the healer and the teacher that they were born to be?
Well, first of all, I remind them that it's not necessary to be a perfect spiritual master before you can teach. If we waited for teachers to be perfect, we have no teachers. So I suggest to them that their sincere intention plus whatever skill they have is sufficient to teach at least what they know. And perhaps even more importantly, to recognize that there's a lot of people out there who are hurting. Some very weird things are happening in the world, like I had noticed. And so, if anybody can relieve suffering, even a little bit here and there, that's a major contribution. So weigh your egotistical fears that I might be enough, not be enough, against the idea you could really help some people, and you recognize that the helping factor is far more powerful than the fear factor.
I think that's great. Yeah, the intention behind it is so important, because you could have somebody who's studied years and years and years, but if they're not coming from that place of really wanting to serve, they're not even going to be as effective as somebody who hasn't done as many years, but has a different motivation, a different intention.
Yeah.
And now some people I know, if they haven't done these years and years of study, they feel like a sense of guilt, like, oh, well, people will think I'm a phony because I haven't studied 50 years or meditated on top of a mountaintop and things like that. So how do people kind of overcome those feelings of inadequacy?
Well, you're talking about fraud guilt, which most people have, also known as imposter anxiety. And I tell them that it's really the small self that believes it's the fraud, and it is the fraud. However, it's the greater self, the spiritual self, the higher self that's going to do the healing. And I cite the statistic that they took a survey of a number of top Hollywood CEOs, studio executives, and they asked them, what is your biggest fear? And the most common response was, I'm afraid people will find that I don't know what I'm doing. Now, meanwhile, these people were kicking butt, running huge multi-billion-dollar studios and making lots of money. So even while they thought they were phony, they were doing a really, really, really good job. So you have to start to get in touch with what I call the two voices in your head. One is the voice of fear, the other voice of love. And one of the ways that the voice of fear represents itself is by saying you're not enough, you're too stupid, you're not attractive, you weigh too much, you're too young, you're too old, you have too many sins, blah, 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 blah. And then there's another voice that says, you know what, you're a pretty good person. You may not be perfect, but you can help. You have some pretty good experience. You have a heartfelt intention. You've taken some training. So go for it. And I invite my students, mostly my coach trainees, to weigh those two voices and recognize that the voice of fraud is the phony, and the voice of love or confidence, that's the true voice. And when you start to recognize the contrast between the two voices, the choice becomes easy.
I've really found that is common. A lot of people that I've worked with, they always feel like they need to take one more seminar, they need to get one more certification. They just don't feel that they're ready, and they're thinking, so how much do I need to know before I can actually start teaching people? And what I tell people a lot of times is that as they start teaching, they learn so much more. It's like it takes your learning up to the next level. And that's how people get to be, masters of what they do, because it's amazing when you really start to turn around. So I think it's great that you're, helping people work through that, because I find that's a really big challenge that people face.
That's a great point, Patrick. So, I'm a Course in Miracles student teacher, and the Course says that the roles of teaching and learning it always goes both ways. So you can't learn without teaching, and you can't teach without learning. And so a lot of my coaches that I train, they become fabulous coaches by practicing. And it's like if you had to wait till you were a perfect parent before you could have children, nobody would have children. So you learn in the doing, and you grow in the doing, and both the healer and the patient grow together because there's a sincere intention to heal in advance. So, you make a good point too, that if you wait until you get all your degrees, you're never going to be ready. I had a client who, as a child, her father was a very strict military man, and he was teaching her piano. She was taking piano lessons, and he would sit next to her on the piano bench while she was practicing, and he put a 50-cent piece on the piano, and he said, if you can play this perfectly, you get the 50-cent piece. And of course, at 6 years old, who plays perfectly? So she hardly ever got the coin. And she developed a mindset that no matter how hard I work, I can never get the reward. So she went about the business of getting PhDs and certificates and degrees and opening up offices on several continents. And she was never enough until I started working with her and coaching. And the affirmation was, I'm enough just as I am. I don't have to prove myself anymore. And that ended this like 50-year cycle of endless degrees and endless boards and endless certifications and endless trying to prove herself. Because if you believe you have to prove yourself, you're starting from a false premise, and you will never get where you want to go.
You'll just be on this
Yeah.
wheel of continual trying to make yourself better, and that ego will make you say, oh, you're never quite there yet.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, something else that I see sometimes that I think you might work with is, sometimes people just aren't sure that they're making a difference. So let's say people do step forth and they want to be a light worker, they want to start teaching. How can people really know that they are being of service, that they're really making a difference the way they'd like to?
Well, your clients will tell you. Your clients will say, thank you for that massage, or thank you for that healing, or thank you for that Reiki session. And they will walk out of their session feeling lighter and freer and suffering less. And they'll thank you. They'll pay you, in most cases. And, that's, to me, that's the greatest reward. And some people fall into the trap of believing that it has to be a Tony Robbins or a Wayne Dyer, and I have to touch thousands or millions of people to make a difference. That's not true at all. Some people have a mission and a ministry that just touches a smaller number of people. And, the quantity is not as important as the quality. And if you are supposed to meet millions of people, Spirit will set it up so you will. If not, you have your own ministry. So you have to be at peace with the circle that you touch and recognize that really it's all in Spirit's hands. You can't sit around and boss how many people you're going to touch. If you're touching people and it's working, even if it's 1 or 2 or 10 or 20 or 100, that's a lot. That's making a difference on the planet.
Well, and I think that definitely plays into a lot of people's ideas of success that, well, if I didn't attract 200 people to my last workshop, I'm not a success. Or, we get this, or if I didn't make, $10,000 off that summit, I'm not a success. And so I know that idea of success sometimes makes people just overwork themselves, until they make that six-figure salary or they get 400 people in their classes. And so a lot of times I think in that process of overworking ourselves, we neglect our own basic needs. Here we are, these light workers trying to improve the world. And meanwhile, we're like killing ourselves trying to get ahead on success. And so, I don't know if you've experienced that in your work where you find a lot of people are just, not attending to their basic needs, and how can we change that pattern when people get stuck in that?
Well, nothing is more dispiriting than an unhealed healer. I've had periods in my life when I was running my batteries down and I saw a video of myself. I said, my God, that guy doesn't look healed. And I realized that I had to go back to the drawing board and take care of myself. And I've learned over many years that when I am at peace with myself and happy and well and healed, then I heal by my presence. And it doesn't matter my words or how many people I'm touching or my income. It's the fact that become a model of well-being. Now, I can't say that I'm always that, but when I'm in my right mind, then people catch it. What did one great minister say when they asked him, "How do you preach?" He said, "Well, I just set myself on fire and people watch me burn." And unfortunately, in the New Age movement, a lot of people set themselves on fire and people watch them burn out. So
Yeah.
you want to have a controlled flame where you are, in your passion and in your joy and in your enthusiasm, but you're not wearing your batteries down because, if you're burnt out or sick or bugged or fatigued, you're not helpful. And so you have to model what you teach at least as much as you can.
Hmm. So true. Yeah. And so I don't know if you found this, but what we're finding is obviously as more and more of these light workers step up, they're trying to do a business based around, healing or metaphysics. And a lot of them have difficulty prospering for different reasons. May have a record that plays in their mind that, oh, I shouldn't accept money for this. So they struggle financially, or they feel guilty for charging for their services. And so I know you've got a new book out called Spirit Means Business. And so I'm really getting into this idea of how we can blend spirituality and business. And so I wonder if you could talk a little about the book, what drove you to write it, and how we can use that to help people with this area.
Well, over many years, I've seen two or three camps of people. One camp is people who are in the corporate world and they're making a lot of money, get lots of benefits, but their soul is dying because they've lost their passion and they're out of integrity. Another group is entrepreneurs who they're following their passion, but they have financial fears and blocks and issues, so they're struggling to make a living, which is working against them succeeding at following their passion. And another group is kind of new age, spiritual, artistic lifestyle type people who really don't care about money, but they have to pay their bills. And so there's a certain disconnect among all those three groups about the idea is that, well, business and money are here and spirit is over here, and never the twain shall meet. And my experience is that the twain do meet if you're willing to have them meet. And there's nothing sadder than seeing somebody who's a gifted spiritual teacher waiting tables because, or, working as a temp because they feel so guilty about earning money for their services. So I always encourage people, let the universe support you for what you do well. And it's really fine to be paid for your spiritual services because people want to thank you. They're used to paying for everything, so why not pay for that? And you shouldn't have to worry about money, which makes a distraction from your spirit, which makes a distraction from your spiritual services. So really the best spiritual teachers I know have come to peace with money. They're not in greed about it. They're not chasing it, but they're willing to charge a decent fee and they're willing to accept a decent fee. They see some people for free. They see some people at a scholarship or discount. And the basic theme is to keep spirit first, and then the money takes care of itself. But you do have to balance both sides of the equation and let them both be real and powerful and practical in your life.
Mm, wow. Yeah, it was interesting because I was going to ask you what group that book's targeted towards, and so you answered that great with these three camps of people, and I've seen two of them, not really the corporate side as much. And so, where do you think this root behavior comes from that so many of these our healers have of feeling guilty for charging for the services? For example, a lot of them don't feel guilty charging for if they were doing a temp job or waiting tables, but when it came to their own gifts and talents, they feel guilty charging for those. Why is there such a difference between those?
Well, it's a good question. I don't know where it started originally, but I do know that lots of people have gotten a program that money is the root of all evil, which is not true because fear is the root of all evil, and it's only when fear is applied to money that money becomes evil. And they've grown up in a religion where the priest or the rabbi or the minister says, everything should be free. And it's just, I knew a yogi in India, and he made a kind of a blanket statement that's an oversimplification, but there's some truth to it. He said that the reason that so much money in the world is in the hands of evil people is because the good people feel too guilty about accepting it.
Wow. Yeah.
And I've actually,
Mm.
because there's people who have money who are good people, of course, but there's some belief that says if I have money, I'm bad. But if you end up doing something you hate and it runs your batteries down just to earn money, well, you could be doing your Reiki massage. That's not right either. So it's really fine to have an energy exchange where I give you massage and you give me money and I can go out and buy groceries for my family. My mortgage company will not accept coaching in exchange for my mortgage payment.
Yeah. I found my electric company doesn't do that either.
Food Land will not take a crystal. So money is an exchange. It's the medium of exchange. The circulation of it makes the world go round. And I think it's we would do well to drop our resistance to it and let it empower us and let's play with it and use money as a metaphor for circulating love rather than circulating fear.
That's a great quote there. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I have found there's so many spiritual practitioners, different kinds, not just teachers, but also energy workers, energy healers, and people in that profession that have this big disconnect between doing something that they love to do, that they feel called to do, and then turning that into a career.
Yeah. It's really God wants to prosper you. The universe wants to prosper you for doing what you love and for helping people. And if money comes to it, I mean, if you happen to be in a trust funder or win the lottery, that's good. But money will find you through the path of least resistance. And for most people, that's an exchange of commercial services. So, yeah, and think of the things you're doing with the money. You can take care of yourself, take care of your family, buy food. You can make donations. You can do creative things. I mean, money is a wonderful tool of love if you let it be.
Definitely. I found myself having to make that same decision years ago. I think I must have spent 12 years working part-time and teaching part-time and trying to juggle the two. And, I had that kind of a mindset that, oh, well, this is a spiritual teaching. It needs to be done for free or, at a deep discount, make it affordable for everyone. And then I realized at some point, I'm like, well, what would I really be able to accomplish if I could do this full time? If I was
Yeah.
doing this all week, 40 hours a week or more. And then I thought, well, to be able to do that, I need to be able to pay my bills. I need to be able to live like everyone else. Like you said, the utilities expect cash. And so, I had to make that decision to, make that transition. And it was a little bit uncomfortable at first after all those years of thinking I had to volunteer my time for spiritual growth and spiritual teaching. But now, it's just a way of life for me. It is something I think that maybe if we take those first uncomfortable steps, it's kind of like a toddler. We get up and we fall down and we just kind of waddle our way uncomfortably down the hallway. But next thing we're running down the road.
Well said. Well, all we're doing is bumping up against old, limiting, illusory beliefs. That's why it's uncomfortable. And I like to think of my work as a donation. I have a fee that I charge people, but I once asked my teacher when I first started. I said, I really want to help people, and I don't really want to take the money. And she said, well, you have to pay your rent, don't you? I said, well, yes, I do. And she said, if somebody couldn't pay, would you turn them away? I said, well, of course not. So I like the concept of happy money, which means that money is exchanged with free will and with joy and with intention. And most people are happy to pay me for my books and my workshops and my coaching sessions. I very, very rarely hear a complaint. And they're getting a service from me and they're happy to pay me. And it's a happy money exchange.
Yeah, that's a nice way of looking at it. I like that.
So we've got a few minutes here before the break, Alan, and I do want to talk about the upcoming Global Spiritual Awakening Conference, November 16th and 17th, totally online, so everybody can participate from the comfort of their own home. And so, Alan, what are you going to be presenting at this event?
Well, I'll be doing pretty much what we're talking about now. I'll be inviting light workers, which means healers, teachers, ministers, anybody who considers themselves a spiritual person who wants to bring greater spirit to the world. And I'll be talking about stepping into your shoes and claiming your right and claiming your entitlement to live your passion, to be paid for your passion, to serve others while the universe is serving you, and to really jump over some of these old hurdles that said, I can't do this, I'm not enough, it's not time yet, I'm not qualified enough, I shouldn't be paid for this. And I'm going to methodically work with people to break down those old beliefs that limit us so we can step into a wider field.
Oh, fantastic. So this is going to be like a course that you're going to give for people?
Yes, it's going to be one of the numerous lectures that a lot of wonderful speakers are giving, and I think it's 30 or 45 minutes. I forget the length of time, but it'll be an in-depth workshop, as much as I can present in that time allotted.
Fabulous. Okay, everybody. So go online, sign up for the event, globalspiritualawakeningconference.com, and you can hear Alan and a bunch of other amazing presenters that we've been doing in the series over the past few weeks. So, Alan, I have to tell you, I have your book, A Deep Breath of Life, and it is so inspiring. So, we're not really like religious in our household, so I didn't want to be reading the Bible to my daughter just because that's not our thing. So I came across your book and I started reading some of these to her, and she absolutely loved them. I love it because they're just one page, so short little read before bed, and it leaves you going to sleep with an uplifting, inspiring thought. So I'm curious to know. You have just an amazing collection of stories in this book. So how long did it take you to write all this? And what is the purpose? Is it just to inspire people? Is it to plant seeds? What would you say from that perspective?
It's to make your day better. It's to give you a theme and a feeling and a vision for how good a day could go if you're willing to let it. So each day has a different theme. It has a prayer, it has an affirmation. And, we need to, we try to feed ourselves good food, hopefully, physically, but then, we need to feed ourselves good food mentally and emotionally. So, as you said, it's one page per day. And it's a spiritual nugget. It's a shot in the arm to lift your vibration, carry you through your day, carry you into your night, and just put your mind in a good frame of mind so you attract everything that works.
Awesome. So I should be reading these in the morning too. I just realized that.
Yeah.
Either way works.
I really like that, where you just have a simple focus. It's not something that people have to invest a lot of time in each day, but it gives them just a moment of inspiration. And I think it really would help to set the tone for the day.
Yeah.
Now, I did want to talk about, just ask you about another book, because it seems to be in contrast somewhat with, kind of how flowery A Deep Breath of Life is. It's very inspirational, but you also wrote another one, Why Your Life Sucks and What You Can Do About it. I love that title. So
I know.
There's a funny story about it. Do we have time before the break, or should we wait till after the break?
Well, you could get started, and then if we have to pick up, that'd be a good transition. We could pick it up on the other side.
I had this friend who was kind of a morose guy, like he was kind of depressed. And so one day he said to me, why don't you write a book out called Why Your Life Sucks? I could use that book. And I thought, yeah. So then, I didn't take it seriously. It was like a joke. And then this publisher approached me and she said, well, I'd like you to write a book for my company. what would you like to write about? And I just made this joke. And I said, well, a friend of mine said, why don't you write a book called Why Your Life Sucks? She says, I want that book. And I
That's great.
said, no, I was kidding. She said, I wasn't.
I love how things work out like that. Sometimes it's like the idea is planted, and then all of a sudden you meet the right person for that idea, and it all just
Well, she
comes
gave me
together.
a big advance and a big promotional campaign. I thought, oh my God, what have I got myself into? So now my life sucks, And so I thought, well, let me see if I could take that title and make it interesting and uplifting to people. So, it's kind of an in-your-face title. But once you get into the book, it's all about 10 reasons your life sucks. And most important, how to unsuck your life in these 10 steps. And it's actually pretty positive and funny and upbeat. And I actually get more letters from young people, like teenagers and people in their 20s, reading that book than my other books. So I guess I spoke to a certain target population. So maybe my friend was channeling when he told me to write that book.
Oh, I totally think so, because we've had to learn a lot about marketing. Having our own business, entrepreneurs always do, and one thing that is always harped on, you've got to identify a problem and then provide them the solution. So I think there's probably a lot of people walking around thinking, oh my gosh, my life sucks. What am I going to do about it? And then all of a sudden, here's your book, Why Your Life Sucks and What You Can Do About It. So
your target market's about 90% of the world.
All right. Well, we are going to go into the break now. So we're going to go into a break, and we'll be back shortly. And please keep in mind that Truth Frequency Radio is a listener-supported station, so you can check out our page. And if you contribute to Truth Frequency Radio, part of that also goes to Spirit's Journey to help us with our continue our show. So this is Spirit's Journey on Truth Frequency Radio, being simulcast on Oneness Talk Radio, and we will see you on the other side. Welcome back from the break. If you're just joining us, this is Spirit's Journey with Patrick and Catherine Andrews, coming to you on Truth Frequency Radio, being simulcast on Oneness Talk Radio.
And we are here with Alan Cohen, another great lineup of speakers for the upcoming Global Spiritual Awakening Conference, November 16th and 17th. It's totally online, so go in, check it out. globalspiritualawakeningconference.com. Get your tickets early, and you're going to be able to listen to Alan talk about some of the amazing things we're touching on the show today, as well as other people such as Dee Wallace, Dan Millman, Michael Murdad, and more. So, Alan, we were talking about your awesome book, Why Your Life Sucks. What are a couple big points just to tell people why their life sucks?
The major one is that we give our power away. That we don't trust or love or honor ourselves, and we tend to believe that our answers and our healing and our salvation come from some external source. So it could be a person, it could be a job, it could be money, it could be a body. We just think that it's all out there, and if I could just import it, then I will be enough. But if anybody's been on the planet for a while, it doesn't quite work that way, that we have to go within for a wholeness rather than seeking a soulmate or a savior or a celebrity to make us enough. So a lot of the book and a lot of my life and work is about helping people take back their power from external sources to whom they have erroneously attributed it. And then when they do, they become a whole person, and they're not looking for somebody to fill them in or fix them or save them. And that's a major turning point in most people's lives. And after that, life becomes a whole different story.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, I've had that experience myself of giving away my power. And when I did, I was completely miserable. And I think that could really shift the whole consciousness of the world in some ways, because, we look to doctors, we look to government, and we see over and over again, they're continuing to fail us. In my opinion, in a lot of ways. And I think the answer is we need to stop thinking somebody out here is going to solve our problems. And that could shift. I mean, I see the whole balance of power in the world. Maybe that's being too broad reaching. What would you think of that?
Yeah, I think you're right on. We tend to attribute politicians and lawyers and doctors and wealthy people the status of gods. And while we're all gods, within, we're all expressions of God, we're all equal gods. And nobody is closer to God than you are. Nobody has more right to heaven than you do. We may haven't taught that. And so it's kind of a playing field leveler to believe that we're all in this together. We're all the same. Abraham Hicks, right?
Oh, of course. Mm-hmm.
So I used to hang with Jerry and Esther in the old days for a little bit here and there. And one night we were having dinner, and I asked Abraham a question. Esther was kind enough to bring him through occasionally. And he gave me a nice answer. And I said, thank you very much. He said, well, we're all in this together. And I thought, well, Abraham's way ahead of me. but what he's saying is, we're all co-equal spiritually. And to worship somebody as a person is really, it's a denial. It's an insult to oneself. I think Plato said that true friendship can occur only among equals. And I would say that's also true for true spiritual growth, that if you put somebody on a pedestal, they're going to crash. And so I never let anybody put me in a pedestal. They could try if they want, but I don't agree. And I don't put anybody else. I respect people and I learn from them. But I realize that, as Abraham said, we are all in this together.
And so what do you think is the relationship between power and control? Because I know the people who give away their power, there's plenty of people who want to control. And so they will take these people who are willing to give up their power to them. It's kind of like a dance they do between the two. And so what do you think is the motivation behind these people that want to control, and we're seeing it more and more in the world, people wanting to take away our personal power? Is it just a lesson for us to wake up and not give away the power? Because if we didn't, then they couldn't control us.
Yeah, well, there's two parts to that equation. One is you have to give power to somebody, and two, they have to accept it and use it against you. And unfortunately, there's a lot of gurus and therapists and teachers and healers that are very happy to take your power and use it against you. So, somebody who seeks to gain power through other people does not recognize that they're already powerful. Why would you need to import something you already own? So, the answer is the same for those who are giving away their power. The answer is the same for those who are taking their power, is to recognize that your true power lives within you. And if you claim that, you don't need to mess with anybody else's head.
Beautiful. Yeah, I love that.
So speaking of power, I'm really curious about your first book. I'm dying to know what is in it. It's called The Dragon Doesn't Live Here Anymore. That's a very powerful title, and I'm really intrigued by what you mean by that.
I got the title from a song by the Paul Winter Consort. I don't know if the song was still around, but back in the 80s and thereafter, they were a wonderful instrumental group mostly. But they did have some vocals. And there was this one, while I was writing my book, I was listening to a cassette, and this song came on called Lay Down Your Burden. And it goes something like, lay down your burden, lay it all down, pass the glass between you, drink it up. I forget the other verse, but it ends up, come through the door, the dragon doesn't live here anymore. And the idea is that many of us tend to live in fear and guilt and aloneness and separateness. And that's the dragon. The dragon is the part of our mind that believes we're incomplete and stupid and ugly and unworthy. And if you can really just drop into your heart and remember who you really are, that dragon has no power over you anymore. You cannot be intimidated by fear once you know that you're empowered by love. Fear is false evidence appearing real. And there's this Christian song I like. I'm not a Christian per se, but there's a Christian song called "Fear is the Liar," and I've been teaching that in my seminars quite a bit. Like, fear is a liar, and the idea is that whenever you're afraid, you're believing some lie, And if you can expose what the lie is, you'll find the truth that the lie was covering, and that's the end of fear. So when you're willing to look for truth that supersedes fear, the fear has no longer has a hold over you, and the dragon doesn't live here anymore.
That's awesome. I can definitely hear echoes of A Course in Miracles in there.
Yeah.
Is there some inspiration there from that?
Well, more than echoes, it's pretty much straight Course in
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been coming up so often because we had Carol Howe on a couple of weeks ago, and we talked in depth about the course. So it's definitely a powerful teaching.
And it's changed my life. I haven't seen anything really quite like it, and I've been with it for almost 40 years now. I'm almost embarrassed to say because I'm not quite enlightened yet, but
Yeah.
I think I'm the slowest learner of the course. But the more I do it, the more I recognize the profundity and healing power that offers is just nothing like it that I've ever seen.
The way I think about it is, what's 40 years to an eternal being, right?
Thank you for that reframe. Gives me some nights I can still make it.
Well, what I like about the course is it gets to the root of what's really going on in the world, from the metaphysical perspective. And I find, get so frustrated today where people, just say one little sound bite and they just stay so superficial. They're not getting to the root of what's really going on. And that's what I appreciate about the course is it just goes right to this, underneath the surface about, why are you afraid, or what's sickness, what's disease, all those topics.
Yeah, and the other thing I like about it is it really simplifies it so that you're looking for two things: either you're in fear or you're in love. And
Yep.
the fear, it's like if you trace the thoughts back, that every dis-ease and dysfunction that we experience ultimately has some kind of a fear underneath it. And so then that's really the illusion. And then as you shift your consciousness, that's the miracle, which I think is a very simple and powerful message.
You got it. You just nailed the 1,200 pages of Course in Miracles in a few short sentences.
Well, see, there you go. Now you don't have to read the whole book.
Well, I'm sure he has. Yeah, that comment's for me because I have not read the full book.
Now we just have to practice it. That's where the work comes in.
Exactly right. Yeah, I was just about to say that. It's like it's one thing to have the information, and then it's the daily practice, the diligence and persistence with it.
Well, do you so I have so many people coming to me today, asking me what's going on in the world. They're getting caught up in the politics, the, whatever it is, climate change, GMOs, you name it, all the problems out there. And so do you recommend the course for people? Because a lot of times we can just spend our whole life trying to solve these outer problems. And of course, the world always has problems. So do you think the course is beneficial in helping people deal with, the chaos of the world and all the problems? And what do I do to, help first?
Yeah. There's a famous line from the Course that says, seek not to change the world, but seek instead to change your mind about the world. And it's giving us that crucial link between perception and experience. And so, yes, there's a lot of very weird things going on, and a lot of how we respond to it depends on the kind of vision that we're using to see it. So if you go into fear and upset and resistance and depression, so you're becoming part of the problem. But if you can stay centered and recognize the presence of God where it seems not to be, if you can be a light worker and decide to give love instead of worry about saving your own butt, you have a whole different perspective that puts you in the perfect position to be helpful to the world. So it's really useless to try to change the world by moving chess pieces around only. You have to move your mind around, and when you move your mind around, you'll be guided as to exactly which pieces to move when and how and where.
Yeah, I think that is something that we keep falling for the same trap over and over again, that It's, when I look at it in terms of basic metaphysics, that we create with our thoughts lead to actions, our actions create our reality, and then we see something outside of us, and so we immediately go to that and we start trying to knock it down or change it and instead of backing up and saying, wait a minute, I need to set a clear intention here. And that's that shift in perception that we're talking about, and kind of restart from the inside out. And I've seen so many miraculous shifts in my life, things that just seem completely illogical. I mean, just like your friend giving you the title of the book, and then right after that, you run into this publisher that just loves the title of the book, almost like you just hand delivered it to her from him. And it was the right time for her, exactly what she was looking for. And I've seen so many experiences like that in my life and other people's lives that I've talked to. So that, when we make that shift, it is amazing how things, even the things that seem the most improbable just fall right in place sometimes.
Well, in spite of what we see on the news, there is an intelligent force that is running the universe. And if we can recognize that we are a part of that intelligent force, and that force is not only intelligent, but it's loving, we drop into a great comfort deep within us that the intellect alone can never provide. So, we have to shift from trying to think our way through to trying to feel our way through or know our way through. And the other piece is that, we're not in this alone. As Abraham said, that we have a higher power that is guiding us, that will heal us, that will show us what our right place is, that is taking care of the world in spite of the appearance. And that doesn't mean you lay in your bed and do nothing, because you may want to be an activist. But where you're coming from as the activist makes even more difference than the actual cause you're working for or against. I think Mother Teresa was invited to speak at an anti-war rally, and she refused. And she said, because being against war is another form of war. If this was a pro-peace rally, I would come because I'm for peace, which is different than being against war. So you can see how attitude makes a huge difference in results. So we have to shift attitude before you can really get the results that you desire.
That was such an insight on her part. I mean, if we think about just the history in our country, we have a war on drugs, we have a war on poverty, everything. Everybody seems to love a war, and it's got to be a war on something, instead of moving for what we want to create and creating the world intentionally the way that we envision inside.
Yeah, I want to be known for what I'm for, not what I'm against.
Yeah, that's very well put.
Well,
And you'll solve what you're against far more effectively if you align with what you believe in rather than what you hate.
mm-hmm. Oh, definitely. Well, I thought that was really powerful, Alan, what you said about, when people respond to the events of the world with anger or frustration, they become part of the problem.
Yeah.
That's profound.
It's kind of like going to a movie theater and watching a bad movie, and you run to the screen and you're trying to manipulate the images on the screen so they'll do what you want them to do. And it's just a blank screen onto which images are being projected. If you really want to change what's happening, you have to go back to the projector and the film. And the film is our mind. And so, and the world, the Course in Miracles tells us, is basically a blank screen. It says it's neutral. And we are every moment making up a story about what the world is. And the Course wants us to make up a new story that works in our favor instead of against us.
So with that idea, Alan, do you believe that our whole life we've basically mapped out before we're born, and that we've created certain exit points, but the script has basically been written and we're just kind of going through that script, and we may make some slight changes or take an early exit point? And I'm not even sure if that comes from the Course, but I know I've heard that around people who do the Course in Miracles.
Well, how long do you have? How long is the show?
Oh, we've got about 13 more minutes.
Well, I think it's both. I think that I think a lot of our life is mapped out. The Course says it is. But at the same time, I think we have to participate in making decisions. And I think there's a part of us that has choices before us, and we have to do the best we can to make conscious choices. And I've noticed in my own life, and I have to say this, that the most important things that have ever happened to me had nothing to do with my planning or choices. I found my way to Hawaii and I started working in Japan and started doing coaching. And all those things were non sequiturs to the things I was doing before. And the people I met, the teachers, the gurus, the healers, they all showed up at the precise moment I needed the most help to take me to my next level. And I did not organize this. I did not orchestrate it. On some level, I really like to believe that I had a soul contract with those people and events, and they showed up at just the right time to help me. So one of my books is one of my favorites called The Grace Factor. And in the book, I make the point that we think that we're making all these important choices. We have to figure out our lives. But meanwhile, there is a higher power that is guiding us and loving us and helping us that far, 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 far supersedes the machinations of an intellect. And when we recognize that we do live by grace, not by manipulation, something happens in our life and we recognize that we're not alone and we're being helped at every moment. So that's the fate factor, the happy fate factor that I like to fall back on, which gives me so much more comfort than the idea that I have to figure it all out myself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great. Sometimes when I think about that, I think about, well, what would that really be like? And I think, well, maybe it's sort of like a screenplay for a movie where the author of the screenplay kind of worked everything out that they envisioned for the movie, but then the actors, once they get in there, they're following the script, but then sometimes they ad lib a little bit and go off script and have some detours, but then a lot of it is also the experience of it, because the writer can sit there and write the script, that the script is kind of lifeless without somebody actually getting out there and doing it. And then so coming down here, and even if a lot of it is kind of scripted out like that, I think going through the experience and seeing how you respond to it and the kind of choices you make and how you feel about it and how you affect other people, I think a lot of that, there is still some value in there. And I'm still not completely sure exactly which way it is, because I had started out really believing in free will, and I think we do still have choice, but then I have seen signs along the way that show there's at least major milestones that definitely seem to be predetermined, like maybe we've made these agreements before we even came in to meet certain people at certain times and things like you were talking about, because I've seen so many of those experiences, they're hard to deny after a while.
I think it's both. I think that they're both functioning simultaneously. You can't choose one and deny the other, because they're both very real factors in our lives.
Mm-hmm. There's another book I'm very curious about, because we do have a dog. His name is Bear, and he is amazing and full of energy. And so I'm really curious if I am as happy as our dog. And so you wrote about that. So can you tell us just a little bit about how that book came about and how you determine if you're as happy as your dog?
Yeah, I had a little, somebody gave me a little Pomeranian dog many years ago and became my best friend. His name was Munchie, a little, probably a 10-pound fur ball. And a fellow said to me, I was so miserable that every day I used to wake up and pray to God to please just let me be as happy as my dog. And I began to do an introspection. I thought, well, am I as happy as my dog? And the answer I came up with was no. So I thought I would follow him around for a couple of years and see what he knew that I didn't know. And there was a lot. And so I put it all in the book.
That's great. That's great. One thing I've noticed about Bear is that he is so focused. I mean, he is obsessed with his frisbee and his ball, and it communicates so clearly without using English. It's amazing. We were just laughing hysterically one day when we figured out what he was doing, because we let him out, but he wouldn't go out into the backyard. He just stood there and stared at us. And then I noticed he was staring at me, and then his eyes would go up to this little ledge by our fireplace. And he did that several times. I'm like, what in the world is he looking at? So I turned and peeked around the corner, and I didn't realize that Catherine had put the frisbee up there. So he was very clearly communicating to me, I want my Frisbee before I go out in the yard. And so ever since then now, we've got this little communication that we do. And his mind is so focused when he's there.
Yeah.
I think maybe, that right there is probably a good lesson I could glean from him is, sometimes the greatest happiness is having that focus on what you love.
Yeah, we think we're training them, but they're really training us.
Yeah, for sure.
I love that. I think that's part of the purpose of animals is, to bring people joy. And, in the beginning, they can be a pain when you're trying to train them as a puppy and all that. But again, just like kids, all that it's pretty worth it when you have those moments like Patrick was talking about, or, those cuddle moments with the cat or whatever. It's all worth it.
We laugh here because whenever our friends come to visit, he'll come and bring them the ball or the Frisbee. And so he'll keep bringing it to them until they pick it up and throw it. And then we turn and laugh. And we're like, well, you've now been properly conditioned.
Well, they have one of our dogs. We have some more dogs now, and one of them just loves to go outside. And when he thinks we might even be going, he starts barking and jumping and yipping and yapping, and you can't say no to him. And he is so enthusiastic. I said, God, please just let me be that enthusiastic about something, because he just like oozes joy. Like, oh, come on, let me just do that too.
Yeah, they're amazing.
Well, yeah, it seems like we've kind of come full circle with, coming back to this idea of happiness, that whether we're talking about success or, aligning with purpose, it's all about it. It starts from the inside, and we're not going to find these things, whether it's happiness or, success, outside of ourselves.
Nope, it doesn't work that way. It's the whole journey is about coming home and going within. In fact, the Course in Miracles says it's not really any journey. You think there's a journey, but at the end of the journey, you realize that you're always where you were trying to get to. So I think T.S. Eliot said, the end of all of our exploring will be to arrive at where we started and know the place for the first time. So that's the great homecoming.
Wow.
That's amazing. Very deep. I love that.
We just got to stop trying so hard. We're already there.
Yes.
All right. Well, once again, we just want to announce about the Global Spiritual Awakening Conference, which is November 16th and 17th. The famous Robin Rose, once again, is organizing this amazing event. We've got a lineup of speakers, including, of course, Alan Cohen, who we've talked with today, Dee Wallace, Dan Millman, myself, Catherine Andrews will be speaking. Patrick will be doing an amazing sound healing event. So if you have never heard crystal bowls before, he's got an amazing set of 12 crystal bowls attuned to the 12 powers from Unity that Mr. Fillmore made these 12 powers. So anyway, it's going to be a phenomenal event. So please join us.
So it's Crystal Singing Bowls with Didgeridoo also.
Oh, that's right, the Didgeridoo.
Yeah. Well, Alan, we have loved having you on today. This has been a blast. And so thank you so much for making some time to be with us today.
I sure enjoyed it. It's just like having conversation with two dear old friends.
I was thinking the same thing. All right. Well, for all of you who have joined us in this amazing conversation, we love having you with us too. So please, just because the show's over doesn't mean that we have to part ways. You can stay connected with us on Facebook at Spirits Journey Radio. Be sure to like our page so that you can be part of our life, and we can be part of yours. And you can also study with us, get a reading with us at intuitiveschool.com. This has been Spirits Journey on Truth Frequency Radio, simulcast on Oneness Talk Radio. I'm Patrick.
And I'm Catherine. Have a great week, and we'll see you next Saturday.
Bye for now.